We are back for another episode of Under the Number. Today, I'm on site at Hollman with CEO, Mr. Hollman himself. How are you?
Good. Doing great.
Thanks for having me at your facility. This is pretty amazing.
Yeah, we've been out here for quite a while.
Well, I know the business has been around for decades. You bought your father out, right?
Yeah.
Many years ago. Can you tell me that story?
Everybody thinks family-owned business is real easy. I started here in 1995. We were down in a very small spot in South Irving, and first time I'd ever kind of worked with my dad. I just sold out another company, and I was running Hollman at the time. And my dad went over to Asia, and I guess fell in love with Asia and with like a gal over there. And unbeknownst, my dad was quite a character. Unbeknownst to me, he had a baby. He brought the baby and the new wife back, and at the time Hollman was doing really well, and I'd been running the company it was about 2001. And he decided that it was time for us to split ways. So we did that. Very hard time in my life. And so when I came back to Hollman in 2011, the company had gotten radically smaller and was less than a $7 million company at the time. That was right after the crash. And he was divorced by then, of course, wants to go back to Asia and not live here anymore. And so we came in with the idea that I would buy it. I think we decided that we weren't good at working together. We had different ideas. And so we made that decision. Hollman started doing very well again. And so he wouldn't come back to sell it to me until 2016. So I've had it since 2016. But we're doing great. Family-owned businesses, people, they're just tough. I mean, you'll hear good stories about them, but everybody I talk to, it's difficult to work with families sometimes. But it's always just been me, which has been nice. No brothers and sisters in the business ever. So, just kind of the battle between my dad and myself for the years. And he passed away about 3 years ago, unfortunately, but it was nice to finally buy it. He was not one to give you anything, so you had to purchase it from him. That was how he did things. So
that purchase process, did that get going, say, when the company had fallen in terms of size and revenue, and how did that go?
So he was a very unique guy. He was a very good businessman, but he would just leave. And so when I got here in 95, I came down here. I didn't grow up with my dad didn't spend a lot of my time with my dad growing up, besides vacations. He was a vacation dad. And so I showed up in 95, and I said, I'm going to spend all this time with my dad. I got here within a couple of weeks. He took off, and we didn't see him for about a year. And it was kind of like, what it raised by wolves type of scenario in the company at the time. It was whoever would step up and take control ran the place. He didn't put anybody in charge. It was just left. And so since my name was on the door, I figured, I was his son, and I'd already run a company at that point in time. I figured, it was time to step up. So when I got into Hollman, and there we were $4 or $5 million business. We grew it to about $28 million. Then I got out, and then, like I said, I got back in about $7 million. And I actually just got a call from the people who used to work for me. Said, your dad's not been here for almost a year. He's been in Asia for almost a year, which I did know that. And we're going to go bankrupt, and something needs to happen. So I flew over to Thailand. We made a deal. My dad was very good about after he made a deal with them, about not honoring those deals. So that deal went. And then about 2015, I went to him and said, if we don't sign this thing, I'm leaving again. I can't, this was supposed to be done years ago. So kind of forced him into getting it done. And then my dad's thing, he got it done. He was happy about it. Of course, my dad was, like I said, a very interesting guy. The day the deal was going to be finished, he came in and he said, here, I want $1 million here. I'm taking $1 million out of the company. So the deal actually changed the day before we actually closed by about $2 million. But we got the deal done. And then, he had buyer's remorse. We started doing really well 2 years later. He almost sued me because he said I took advantage of him to get the company sold, even though we had a professional valuation company come in. I got no discounts. And actually, like I said, paid an extra $2 million more than the valuation company said. I could tell you a lot of stories about my dad. Someone could do a whole podcast. There was so many weird, crazy stories about him. But, you can look at things in life, even being fired by your dad that I was in 2001, you get mad about it, or you can just figure out that, it's part of life and you got to learn a little bit and go on. And learn from it. My whole life I've been, crazy things have happened to me, and I just kind of have always been the person that perseveres and learns from it and moves forward. Some things are tough. I think, I don't know, things are tough on you. I think it makes you a little stronger. Just turned 57 yesterday. There's something about my generation that I like, that we were just kind of grew up, no helmets on the bikes, just, got hurt. I don't remember anybody getting really hurt. I mean, it was just, you did what you did to survive. And I wouldn't trade. I'd much rather have grown up when I grew up than unfortunately, when my kids are growing up now. I think they almost have too much protection on them and stuff. And that trickles down to business and life and everything else. It's going to be interesting to see my deal. And I mean, I've told this to people. I think there's a reason why some people get very, very wealthy and run very big businesses. And I think they grew up with that mentality. And I think there's a lot of people that are softer now that I think there's been a real discrepancy. And I don't think when I grew up there was as much, because I think we were all, famous saying, raised by wolves at the time, all of us.
Yeah.
So it's different.
Well, you talk about the old school approach. I heard you tell a story in my preparation for this about you basically seeing a Planet Fitness billboard, calling the number, and being able to have a meeting with the CEO, which is one, just the fact that you would just show up in person is already kind of an older generation move, which is tried and true, obviously. So tell me about that approach, and also tell me, because we haven't even covered it, when you walk in, show up in person, and you pitch some giant CEO, what do you tell them it is that you do at Hollman and that you can provide for them?
Well, that was interesting. So I had just taken over the company. This is about 2011. I'm with my cousin that worked for the company at that point in time. And, we had to go drum out to get business. So I used to go, the thing that got Hollman off the ground, really big off the ground in the 90s, is I decided one day to throw a bunch of samples in my car, and I took off for 3 months. And I just drove from place to place to place to place and made cold calls. I mean, I went all the way up into, from here, I went all the way up through Chicago, all the way north. It was everything east, and all the way down to the Florida and back.
Wow.
So I saw everything. But that mentality, kind of the second time when I took it over, I'm like, okay, I got to do the same thing. So I went up, he lived in Pennsylvania, I grabbed him and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And we started driving, and within an hour, I see this Planet Fitness billboard. I'm like, do we sell them? And he goes, my cousin's like, no, I work out there. They have metal lockers. I said, great. They need our lockers. And he's like, well, no, they just have metal. I'm like, Jim, you got to think bigger than that. If they got lockers, it's the locker's a locker. We got to get a way to sell them. And so you're right. I just called up. I got on my cell phone, figured out where they were. They were in New Hampshire, called up and said, hey, I want to make an appointment with the CEO. And they said, that's Chris Rondeau. And I said, great. They said, yeah, his assistant said, we can see you in about 2 weeks. I said, that is fantastic. And I came back to Dallas, and there's a guy named Tim here that had a Planet Fitness. I called up because as a franchise model, I called him a franchisee, and I said, can you meet with me for a minute? He said, him and I are still friends, by the way. And he said, yeah, I can meet with you. And we went there, and I said, what kind of people are these? He said, they're just crazy. At the time they shared a business, literally a building with the Chuck E. Cheese. He said they're going to take you in the Chuck E. Cheese and try to make it sound like normal. And that's where they like to have their meetings, because it's just chaos.
The Planet Fitness corporate office.
Shared a business building. They were in one building.
With not Chuck E. Cheese corporate.
No, just a Chuck E. Cheese. So I went up there, and he said the guy, I said, how's the guy going to dress? He said, usually jeans and something purple. And I said, great. And I'd owned with some other friends, the Marshmallow Fun Company, which did marshmallow guns. And he said, these guys will give you, I mean, it was crazy. They would give you a bottle, sometimes of water. He would tell me this, it would have just vodka in it. And so you could do all this stuff nowadays, but it was that kind of a crazy pirate mentality, they used to call it. And so I went up there and with marshmallow guns, started shooting everybody, gave a bunch of marshmallow guns. And ironically, I was back in the day, I was wearing True Religion jeans. Chris comes out wearing True Religion jeans. I'm wearing a Robert Graham was the big style at the time. So I'm wearing a purple Robert Graham long sleeve, button down, untucked. and he's wearing a purple Robert Graham button down, untucked, not the same shirt because there's so many varieties. And I just looked at him and said, "Hey, we're going to do a lot of business together." And he just smiled. I don't think he knows this day that I actually did a bunch of research on it before I went up there. And I just said, "Can we do business?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Let's design something." We had that deal done within 30 minutes. We just liked each other. And back then, we shook hands back in the day, and they've been one of our best customers for a long time. In fact, my brother owned a bunch of Planet Fitnesses, just sold out, and he still owns all of Australia's Planet Fitnesses. And,
Wow.
And I own about 1% of that just because he's my brother. During COVID, they needed some money.
Wow.
To get through COVID.
Yeah.
I'd give my brother anything. So, it was funny, but that's how you kind of did things. We still try to do that, but it's today the world's changed a little bit how things do. Everybody was on Zoom, and it's not as personal as it used to be.
Well, and here's kind of a two-part question. One is obviously Hollman makes the lockers, which sounds like one of the more challenging products to differentiate on and to get someone to change their mind on. And I know that now you guys serve countless, thousands and thousands of customers and country clubs and workout facilities and professional sports teams, college athletic department, and athletic facilities. The list goes on. How do you differentiate? And part two, when did that tilt happen where you started selling to teams and programs?
So, Hollman's always been lucky. We've always been kind of the biggest in our section, and now we're so much bigger than anybody else. And the reason I say that is it's given us opportunity. My dad was so conservative, so we own all of our buildings, all of our equipment, all of our stuff. So when you buy from us, you're not paying for me leasing equipment, me renting buildings, everything else. And the size of the company allows us to buy things less expensive than our competition. So we've really concentrated, and during COVID really helped us. We really concentrated on making the absolute best product we could. So we were kind of on the top, we were able to offer a product on the top end of the marketplace with people that can't get, and everybody that has to compete with us because we can compete on price also really has to kind of dumb down their product.
Mm-hmm.
So until somebody comes in that has the wherewithal, it's very hard to compete with Hollman on a product basis. Everybody that comes in, they come in really inexpensive. They try to get on price, but locker rooms, whatever you're doing, it's people in today's society, they don't want anything that's going to have the opportunity to fail, and they want it as simple as possible. When you open a club, any club, you open the Dallas Cowboys, whoever, they don't want a problem in their locker room. They have other things they're worried about than these little boxes that some guy makes in Dallas, Texas. So we've really focused on that approach, and it's been good for us. And then we've got we're the only ones with the big R&D department. I've got a 6-person R&D department. I don't know anybody else has more than one person in R&D in our industry. So we are going around the globe looking for new products and everything that we can get. So we've always got the newest materials, newest products, and being as big as we are, all of our suppliers are bringing us stuff first because they're trying to sell it to us. So we actually don't have to go out and look as much as we used to for product because they're all coming in to our warehouse. The thing about lockers that people don't understand, and with any product, but when you take a product seriously, you take a football program, you're going to go to Notre Dame, which we're just installing that today. Oh, wow. You got to Notre Dame, and you get the coach brings you in. Now you get money, but the coach brings you in, and you get a locker. Everything else is shared space. So we've had that. That's been on our mind for a long time, where we're creating a space, a personal space inside somebody else's business is what it is. And when you can come into Notre Dame or USC or the Ducks, Oregon or wherever you're going to go, and you come in and you've got this curated product for you, the kids love it because it's their only space. If they, that's where they keep all their gear. That's where they can, a lot of these things you can sleep in nowadays. You've got everything around you, airflow around you. You've got drying your pads, for football, you've got all these things. That's your only space, and everything else is shared. And so we take lockers really seriously, but you can do that with anything. I mean, Starbucks takes their coffee real seriously. That's why they've been so successful. They really talk about where their beans come from and where, but now they've got so big, they can go out and source these things. So it's the same approach as most companies. The big companies have an advantage just from a sourcing global standpoint. And, back in the 90s, we didn't have anything global. It was all, you bought it from local sources here and there. We don't have a lot of Chinese product in our product at less than 1%. During COVID, we figured that out, but we're buying it from all over the country, from all over. Things are coming in from Europe. We did the University of Alabama football. We had almost 200 POs coming from 7 different countries around the world to bring that product in to make that thing work. And it's just a global economy now, so it's a lot different.
You mentioned Alabama doing their locker room.
Yeah.
Tell me about selling to college programs versus professional franchises. I know you guys have customers in the NBA and plenty of pro teams. And I'm curious how you have witnessed or experienced the professionalization of college, specifically college football. Does it end up feeling like the same sales motion now? Like they're becoming, one and the same?
So college is different. College is doing it, the pro teams have an architect, and they just usually buy what they buy. And they don't, in my estimation, they don't care as much about their people as a college program does. And I don't know if that's going to change because pros, I've talked to like a pro locker room in today's dollars is about, like a football program is about $600,000 to $800,000. A good college is running, $1.5 million,
wow,
so to speak.
And that's because they want all the bells and whistles for recruiting?
They want all the bells and whistles for recruiting, which when NIL came in, we thought it was going to change stuff. We thought they would be like the pros I've talked to. I mean, not going to mention teams, but I've talked to teams, and they're like, no, we're doing this, kind of screw them. We're paying them money. We pay these guys big money. We're not going to spend a lot of money in a locker.
Yeah.
The colleges always had to give more because of the recruiting.
Yeah.
So when NIL came, they haven't slowed that down. We thought that would slow down. I really thought that would be like they'd take the pros approach where it's, no, we're paying these guys. They'd rather have the money. The colleges are still on an arms race, and the contracts, the football contracts especially, are just getting so big. I just read something the other day for NFL's renegotiating or whatever, and they're going to be NFL's going to be, I think, the $400 million a team contract is what I read. I believe is the number in their new negotiations, and their salary cap's under $300 million. They're already $100 million positive before they do ticket sales, they do stadiums and everything else. Yeah. So the money's there. In college football is the second biggest revenue sport in the country, bigger than NBA, bigger than everybody else. Those TV contracts are coming, and they're renegotiating. And I believe that new negotiations, I think in 3 years on that, you've got more information than I do, but it's just going to keep going up and up and up. And so the colleges, even though they're yelling about NIL or whatever, there's a massive amount of money going in there, but there's a race for colleges I hear about all the time to actually stay relevant. Like, I think we talked about the other day, the thing that happened with the, Pac-12.
Yeah.
Oregon State, Washington State get left out.
Yeah.
I've been talking to coaches. They are concerned that they're going to get left out if they don't stay up. You could take Tulsa or, any college like that. If they can't keep a good football program, they can be relished and can be kicked out of the conference they're in. And there's going to be another conference realignment, I believe, in 3 or 4 years when all the new contracts come up with TV, because that's what realigned it last time. It's going to be interesting. I read a stat the other day, hopefully my stats are good on this thing, but, Washington State their enrollment went down by about 6,000 kids after they were basically had no conference to play in. So it's affecting the school, it's affecting the alumni, it's affecting the money that comes in. So this arms race for even lockers and for facilities is real, and this NIL is real, and there's such a deal where you have to win. It's kind of like they do over in Europe with the soccer teams.
Right.
You can get deregulated down.
Yeah.
So how do you stay in the top 4 conferences?
Yeah.
If you don't put out a good team for a couple of years, they're going to replace you. Because it hurts their negotiating tactics with TV. So it's really an interesting thing. I would hate to be, I love the athletic directors out there, but what a interesting thing. And the athletic directors are getting much more sophisticated. They used to be, they come from high school, or, they used to coach somewhere or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Lifelong coaches.
And now there's, CEOs of major companies are coming into being these athletic directors because they need that type of a skill set anymore, which is good and bad, is just changing. And it's changing so fast. I really think someone needs to do something about how fast it's changing. It's going to be interesting, but I think there's going to be some schools that do really great and a lot of schools that get left out. I mean, we're doing UCLA's locker room now. We're doing USC's and UCLA's. UCLA hasn't had a good team for a couple of years, and they got to get a good team back. And I was reading a thing a couple of days ago. They're top 10. They got the top 10 in the transfer portal this year for recruits because they got to put money in.
Yep.
If they don't, they go down to, do they get kicked out of a conference too?
Yeah.
It's just such a fast moving thing. It's going to be incredible to see how it works out. My question, how did they create loyalty anymore for the kids? They're all hitting the transfer portal. I mean, that's, from an outside guy, that needs to stop.
Yeah.
There needs to be some, maybe you can transfer once. I don't know. You don't want to get stuck behind, you get a great offer, you're a quarterback from high school, and all of a sudden someone transfers in on top of you and you can't get out from underneath it. I understand that. But again, how many times can you transfer? Because these kids are transferred every single year. And the contracts, you got y'all saying that they try to do with some of the kids, they don't really hold up at this point in time. There's not, it's not like the NFL where you're under strict contract. You sign a contract and it's kind of good until school offers you more.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting. I'm fascinated by it. I'm scared by it. As far as facilities go, we've thought it would have an impact. It's actually having the opposite impact. They're spending more money.
Yeah.
But they also get, the way the money flows is a lot of that money stuck in facilities. So they can't pull it to the kids for NIL money. Or, now they've got this revenue share. And NIL, they have NIL and revenue share.
Yeah.
They can't, it's hard for them to get stuff in certain buckets.
Yeah. So there's some level of tension there where do you want the money to flow? And you want to have a nice facility to attract the talent, but then you got to pay the talent for them to come and then stay, to your point.
Right.
And also, you mentioned the sophistication of some of these new athletic directors like Stanford. John Donahoe, his last job before becoming the Stanford AD was CEO of Nike. It's unbelievable. There are a lot of people I've had on the podcast, a lot of people who listen, who, whether it's startups or more mature companies, they sell into teams and professional and collegiate. Specifically on the collegiate side, what is your advice to a young entrepreneur who's trying to penetrate an athletic department? What do they need to know? Like, what is the relationship building? What has worked for Hollman? And I know you said you've been in kind of a pole position for a long time, but still, there's, you retain these customers.
I think you got to, for a company like ours, you got to figure out who the head coaches are, or the athletic directors. The good ones are getting pulled all over the place. When they get to a new spot, they put their mark on that spot. So for us, if a coach, Alabama gets a new coach, we've got to watch that very carefully, because Alabama's new coach might just go, hey, it's time to redo these lockers. We want something different. But also then we're following the old coach.
Yeah.
Because they like us, right? So we got to follow them to the next spot.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly, we've got a thing called D1 Ticker that we look at, that is in our group, that shows all the movement in college and college sports. So we really watch the movement in people, because you're not really betting with the university as much anymore. You're betting with where the people are going.
Yeah.
Because, they're the ones, like you just said, they're the ones that are going to make or break the team. And that's why so much money now is being paid for coaches and for athletic directors, because, good athletic director is going to bring a good coach in. That good coach is going to be able to go get these people to come on in and hopefully get them at a discount because they know certain people.
Right.
And so, but it's just such a weird thing. And then how long can they keep their prestige going? Great coach, but are you going to, another guy's offering you an extra $500,000 a year to go play? Do you stay there? I mean, Oregon's been very good at keeping their players, but they got Phil Knight backing them.
Yeah.
It's really, you got to have the money. I mean, everybody right now, everybody that here is talking about Texas Tech.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say.
That's who they're talking about. The Texas Tech has the money.
Yeah.
And Texas Tech was brilliant. They kind of established all this stuff before some of these rules started coming out. So they kind of got ahead of the game. They've done a great job, and we happen to do that job too, but the facilities they have the most, at this point in time, they have the most expensive locker room in the country. That'll change with Oregon coming up. We're doing Oregon's, but you got to have those big donors.
Yeah.
I was at the thing for Oklahoma State, met their coach the other day, and that was kind of the talk. They don't have the big, they're worried they don't have those billionaire donors.
Right.
You got, you almost have to have a billionaire or somebody backing you at this point in time. I mean, unfortunately, and I wish it wasn't that way. I wish it was a little bit different, but it's going to be, I hope it shakes out for colleges, because I don't want to, my deal, if you ask me what I would think about college kids, I would love to see them being able to play, 5 or 6 years, because, 98% of them from the big schools are not going to go play pros. Gives them a little chance to make a little bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to see something where they're allowed to stay at that school and get a degree.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing to me how many people will be in school for 4 or 5 years playing sports, and all the time it takes to play sports, and they don't make it to the NFL, and they don't have a degree when they walk away.
Yeah.
And I wish we could do something about that. That'd be my dream, is that the schools would have to make sure they have an opportunity even after their 5 or 6 years of playing, if they don't go pros, or even if they go pros, to finish their schooling out and get a degree.
Yeah. It's funny you say you have that D1 tracker. That's Follow the Talent. Is like, I have a whole segment in my biweekly newsletter where I track and publish featured people moves and the interesting human capital flows across sports media and entertainment. It tells you so much about where the whole market's going. And obviously, as a specific sales signal, where did your champion just go? How can you have them, do that for you once more at the next place? It makes all the sense in the world. I'm curious, as all this money is going through the roof, and we're really honing in on college football here. You mentioned, the Cody Campbells and the Texas Tech, Phil Knights at Oregon. I've been saying, can we please get these nerds to like football, because there are so many living billionaires who are Stanford alums, but they're not interested.
Stanford's honestly a unique thing. They have so much money potential, and they've never really got the football team to I've been to a game there. It's like they can't get the people to come to the games. They're all high tech people. They need a high tech person and by the way, besides Paul Allen, there's really not been any high tech people that have even owned teams, have there?
Not really. And interestingly, as of just last week, Josh Kushner, who has this big tech focused fund called Thrive, literally huge positions in OpenAI and Databricks and all the biggest, most cutting edge technology companies.
Yeah.
They just set up a fund. He just raised a $10 billion fund. He's like 30 years old. It's insane. And then he set up a new vehicle called Thrive Eternal, where they just bought a $100 million stake in the San Francisco Giants. And they're now looking at, okay, well, two ends of the barbell here. We have our ultra automation, and then what about these brands that have 150-year traditions and things that we want to own forever? Just kind of interesting. I wouldn't be shocked if that actually gets some of these tech people to wake up and think, hey, maybe I should buy a franchise. What is something that has stood out to you in the NIL collectives, big money era? Like one story maybe where you just thought, oh my gosh, this thing has changed. This world has changed. The requests I'm getting and the people that I'm dealing with.
The crazy stories are like, Baylor's basketball team just goes away. They'll hit the transfer portal and they'll leave.
Yeah.
And then you got to rebuild a new team. Recently, Oklahoma State, I think the number he said was 67 new recruits came in. Have come in there since he took the job. So you got 67 brand new people. Can you imagine that 67 brand new people? Now you're trying to build a team.
Yeah. How do you start a culture? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Indiana last year was a great example. I think they just found some magic. They found the magic. Indiana's an older person's team. They got a lot of veterans. It's like grabbing a lot. It's like the NFL grabbed a lot of veterans that really been around long and building a culture. And when you hear of everybody on that team talking, it was all about culture. So I would think if I was doing it, if I was a coach, I like that style. I think that getting, even if they're not the best players, getting the veterans that can come in and help build that culture from the younger kids. And, there's a big difference. You play, there's from an 18-year-old kid coming out of high school to a 26-year-old veteran that's still playing college football, by the way, some of these guys.
Yeah, 60 years. Yeah.
There's a big difference, or 24-year-old or whatever. There's a big difference in maturity level and everything else. So having, Indiana really built around that last year. They had 0 5-star recruits on that team. Mendoza he's old considering, normal playing, right? He was fifth, sixth year quarterback. But that type of, I think they need to look at that kind of thing. I think that was really fascinating how they built that team. And they really they didn't have any big time players. Oh, obviously they did at the end. They won the Heisman Trophy, but just build. It's going to be so hard to build a culture without the older people that have been around. Because could you imagine coming out at 18 years old and all? They're doing. And I just went to a meeting with NIL for high school kids. This is getting crazy.
High school kids have agents.
Yeah,
literally. All over the place.
There's a guy that used to work for Nike for 23 years. Works for me here, Danny. And he went to work for an agency. And I said, why? For his baseball. I said, why do you want to come work for me? He goes, oh, I'm getting calls from high school kids now. And we're trying to take on high school kids to get them into college. And he goes, and then the college is going to go. And he goes, my friends used to be in Major League Baseball. And now I'm arguing with him about some kid that wants all this money coming out of college because he's so used to getting paid. Right. And he goes, that's just baseball. Could you imagine? He goes, what these football guys are getting? Hey, do you come out and play football if you're, hey, we'll pay $6 million. Ewers from Texas was going to get $6 million and went to the pros.
Seventh round pick.
Does he ever? Statistically, he'll never get the $6 million out of the pros. Statistically. Now, he had a decent season last year, which was fantastic to see. But statistically, he's not going to make $6 million in the pros because they're not actual, NFL guy only lasts a couple of years and he's 7th round. Yeah. Or 6th round, right?
Maybe round. It was 6th. Yeah. Like he slid.
He slid, and where does that come?
Yeah.
What happens to him?
Yeah. Okay. Last question. If you go back to being an 18-year-old kid, which Hollman locker room facility that you have built across any program across the country would seal the deal for you? As an 18-year-old, what would have lured you in the most?
Alabama was the one that when we went there, it was a neat story. So everybody wanted Alabama. We went there and I made the pitch. I said, basically, we're going to build a locker that comes all around you and you can sleep in it. We're going to build everything in a spot. And I think Alabama it's 5 years old now, has one of the best locker rooms still in the country. Their facilities are amazing. Of course, Oregon, no one talks about this. Oregon Ducks have the most unique situation up there with Phil Knight, because what he does is he buys the land from the university and builds whatever he wants. So there's no limit on what he can build. They don't have to go out and get bids. They don't have to go out and do anything. If he wants it, he builds it, and then he donates the whole thing back. Those two schools, Texas Tech, it is unbelievable what they've done down there. In a very, very, very short time. But I'll tell you what, they're just all moving that direction. I mean, the big schools always fed the money, and they're always going to have the, they have the support.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what's going to happen when Phil passes away. I mean, he's I've met him many times because I grew up in Oregon, but he's definitely getting older.
Yeah.
And hopefully that stays going that direction. Give me a thing. Phil Knight is the #1 donor up in, of course, the University of Oregon. Phil Knight is the #2 donor at Oregon State because that's the difference in money between the two schools.
Wow.
And he gives money to Oregon State, according to people up there, just because it's still in Oregon. It kind of feels bad for him.
Yeah, I bet. Right. Yeah.
But that's the difference between having a billionaire on your side or not. I would, Michigan should do well. Michigan has a lot of billionaires that actually like sports up there.
Yeah.
Does Michigan State? They have one now. They have one billionaire, I think.
Yep. Massive donation.
And but you have to have that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, T.P. Pickens isn't it? Oklahoma State, and he passed away. They got to find a guy.
Yeah.
Texas Tech found their guy.
Yeah.
Alabama, I don't know if they have any billionaires, but they got a lot of people giving a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we need to leave it there. I'm getting the tapping on the wash out here. I know you got a meeting to run, but thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
And thanks for hosting me.
Oh, this is great.